Welcome to the Work-Life Balance Podcast. I am Kara.
And I am Maggie.
Together, we're a power real estate team with the Bajetti Partners in Nashville.
We believe that the hustle culture of today's driven entrepreneur who lives and works in Middle Tennessee requires balance. All right, welcome back to the Work-Life Balance Podcast. Today we have Mr. Michael DiLucchio with New Wave Lending, one of the best and most fun. So we want to talk to him a little bit today about all things lending, and he also has a podcast. So we want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But, all right, just to start, how did your story with lending, and I know you kind of have the jump start with your company, how did that all begin, and like what's the story behind it?
Yeah, so I got into lending when I graduated college. I went to Alabama and was on the speech and debate team there and studied accounting. So it was all the boring numbers part. But I got into lending right when I got out. I started working for a big mortgage company called Mr. Cooper, which is a large like refi shop. It was basically like what you would imagine Wolf of Wall Street is, where it's like 250, 300 salespeople on a floor with like cubicles and all that. So it was a lot of calling. Intense. Yeah, super intense. So it was a lot of calling and just like doing work on the phone and doing all refis. I knew I wanted to get into purchasing because like that process is a lot more relational and a lot more people focused as opposed to just like churning out refinances. So I met this guy in Dallas named Jerry Williams who wanted to start a mortgage company centered around technology and focusing on the customer experience. And so I joined him and was working there for about 4 years in Dallas. And then when 2020 hit, we had a restructure of our company. We got purchased by a company out in Florida. And in that transition, the conversation was, hey, you know, we really need to focus on purchasing in a different area because we were just focused in Dallas. So it was either, hey, go start in Austin or Denver were the two places that we were talking. And I was like, hey, man, honestly, like, I'm from Nashville. I grew up here. I would love to go back there and like start something there, like where I grew up and, you know, the people that I know there. So he said, okay. And so I came out here and started the branch in 2020 and we've been rolling ever since.
So this is the only branch?
So we have a branch here and then Dallas where we started. Okay. And then our owner, Jerry, actually moved up to Southwest Colorado in a little tiny town called Pagosa Springs. Okay. Like in the middle of nowhere. It takes forever to get up there. You have to fly, take 2 flights and then an hour and a half drive just to get to his little giant cottage in Colorado. Awesome, but he's up there running the branch in Colorado.
So is it super hard to just like, I mean, from scratch, create your own branch here in Nashville? Was it really difficult to, I mean, there's a lot of competition, I assume, in the lending business. So yeah. Was it difficult?
There is a lot of competition. I do think that it's kind of like a slow burn. I think it's similar to like starting up in, you know, being a realtor. It's kind of a slow burn. You start with your network of people that you know, and then it's just like slowly getting your name out, and it kind of turns into like a snowball. Yeah, exactly. I mean, networking and honestly just doing a really good job. So like the majority of realtor relationships that I have come from the listing agents on the deals that I'm doing right now. So it's like just a lot of updating them and just doing a really, really good job in the middle of the transaction. And, you know, really just putting yourself out there like, hey, you know, and I think it always comes from a place of, hey, I know you guys have, you know, existing relationships. Like, you know, coming and being like, you obviously don't have a lender work with me is like completely ignorant and kind of ridiculous. But, you know, we always come from it like, hey, you know, we would love to be another resource for you because we do all kinds of stuff. And I think over the last probably 5 or 6 years as I've been in this, I've seen so many transactions and a lot of different ways that transactions go wrong. It was honestly a great blessing that I just got like a lot of reps because when I was at Mr. Cooper, I was doing 20 or 30 transactions a month. Wow. So it was like, you can just see you just see reps. And when you come from that environment, you just know what can go wrong on transactions. So you kind of get ahead of it.
Well, and it's like, you're saying like also like when you're doing the deal, it is so important that you do such a great job because all parties are watching you, not just your buyer. Like that listing agent, she's watching you or he's watching you, and that's how you get that business. So
because it's doubled.
It's double, yeah. And it's like we spoke to a lender recently, and he was like, I make sure I check in even with that agent and be like, hey, like, is there anything you need from me? Or these buyers are super qualified, and just going like the extra mile. So, I mean, that's amazing. So you're getting like a double Dewey right there.
Exactly.
Like, that's cool.
Yeah. And I think what's really important, like, especially from the lending side, it's like, you will never be the star of the show. Like, and if you try to be a lender that's like, I'm amazing, like, you will not succeed, because it's like, you're either going to be the problem or you will just get the deal done and nobody will know who you are.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're a really, really good lender, like, your realtors should be amazing. Like, they should be the star of the show. And it's like, they did amazing. We're on their team. You know, like, even our emails are like, you know, I have a good friend named Chase, and I do a lot of business with him. Any email that goes out to his client, I'm like, hey, I'm a part of Chase's team. I'm not like, hey, look how amazing New Wave is. You know what I mean? It's like, if you focus on the realtor, you will always do better.
Yeah. No, we're totally about that. Like, it's such a teamwork, the whole thing. So.
It is. And it makes us look better. And if we're doing better, you're doing better. Yeah. So it's just collectively, like, as a team, like you said, that's so important to make sure that everybody's involved. You're not just like, hey, look at me. Like, you actually point to the people that are bringing you business, because then they're going to keep bringing you business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like, I'm just thinking of this analogy now, but I think it's very similar to songwriting, because, you know, we're in Nashville. There's a lot of songwriters and all that. Like, I would rather be like the really good songwriter where it's like, the only people who know me are the other people in my industry.
Right.
Like, I don't really care about being famous to like the consumer. That'd be great. You know, there's a lot of good things that come with it. But what's really cool to me, and what I've always like gravitated towards, is like, I want to be known by realtors, because like, that's who I care about serving. You know, it's always about the client. It's always about them having a good experience, but it's like, we're putting the realtors on the pedestal, and it's like, hey, look at this amazing business that they built, and like, let's just help move them forward.
And I think that's a really good analogy, because that's the difference between a realtor and the lender. Yeah. Like, we're focused on the consumer while you're focused on us. Yeah. Right. Not us in particular, but you know what I mean.
If he fails on his job, the deal falls through. So you are the songwriter, which is a great analogy. Yeah. Because we go to Puckett's a lot, and all the songwriter nights, and it's amazing when they actually, like, all these famous songs that you listen to, when they're singing the song that they legit wrote. Yeah. And I'm like, I've talked to him, like, why aren't you on the stage? Like, no, like, my job is to create the material, and then they go up there and do the showboat stuff. But if it wasn't for him writing that beautiful song, or her writing that song, like, same with the lending, like, and that's super off base, but it is kind of like circling Nashville into what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. So something else I want to talk to you about is like the relationship that you had and still have with your mentor, and how that has like helped you grow in your business.
Yeah. So, I was telling Maggie, it's like very similar dynamic, because Jerry, he's 45, he has 3 kids, and he is like well established throughout his career. And I'm kind of like on the early end, and I'm kind of like the grinder. So it's been an interesting dynamic to like get his perspective. He started in the business before, you know, right at the 2008 crash. So he's seen a lot of the cycles that we've seen. So he can pull the reins back on me a little bit, because I just kind of want to go, which is, I think, is like very similar, you know, to any young person's demeanor. Yeah. It's like high drive, not out of, you know, more out of just like ignorance and like, hey, let's just go. And he's like, whoa, we got. Yeah, exactly. So I think that dynamic's been really good. You know, he always brings an interesting perspective. And that's why the podcast has been really fun. I mean, it's similar to this, where I feel like it helps train you to look at what's going on in the market, because you have to then talk about it. Absolutely. So that's been really good as well. And just to get his perspective on things has been really nice.
It's an accelerator for sure.
It's an accelerator, and I think everybody needs it. And it's like, for her, I tell her all the time, like, I want to be able to like steer you away from making some of the mistakes that I made through my 20 years in the business. And so it's like, she doesn't have to fall on her face all the time, because I can kind of like, and he's doing that with you, kind of redirect and like, you know,
show you what not to do do it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Is there any one thing that you can think of specifically that helps you not fall on your face that Kara taught you?
Oh, there's multiple.
Just the first one that jumps.
He has his own podcast now.
This is usually me asking the hard questions. Oh my gosh. No, I would just say, like, more than anything, just negotiations and just being able to work with the other side. Like, she tells me a lot, like, okay, no, this is one piece of advice that you've given me that I think sticks with me more than anything, is less is more, especially with our job, maybe not as much with yours because you do have to be more transparent, but put out fires behind the scenes. Don't bring problems to your clients, bring solutions. And I think that's like the number one thing that Kara's taught me. But I mean, there's a whole array of things.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I'm glad she's listening to me.
I know. But I think the podcast has helped a lot with that too, because we actually do get to sit down, have quality time, and like really be able to learn about specific topics. And it's kind of like training. Like this podcast is essentially training for me, because we sit here and talk about things, and I learn something every single time we talk. So I'm sure it's the same with you, with your
absolutely.
mentor as well.
I mean, when I look at the podcast, like I don't, nobody could be listening to it and it's still a benefit. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's more about the process of creating it and like forcing yourself to go through the process of learning about the markets, understanding what's going on, seeing trends in the market that are happening. Like all of those things are much more beneficial than how many people listen to it. So it's like just like doing the reps, it could be not recorded at all and it's still going to be beneficial.
I fully agree.
Absolutely.
And it's like almost like therapeutic in a weird way. Like when we talk about it, it's like, oh my God, like we might bitch about like a terrible client that we've dealt with that week. And it's like, you internalize a lot of that. And it's like, okay, we just swallow it and it's like done. We don't worry about it. But then we'll sit here and be like, okay, well, let's kind of like, and then it's like a different perspective comes out. And we just kind of work through it. So it's cool.
Yeah, especially in like an isolating, like real estate is pretty isolating. You're either like you're a solo realtor, solo lender. It's like, it can be, you can just internalize all of the stuff that happens. So
it's nice to have somebody to kind of soundboard off of and talk about your problems and how to fix them and whatever. So
that brings us to, let's talk about using a local lender, which I super support that. Like, I really don't care for these big bucks. What was the one you went through? Rocket Mortgage, things like that. Like, that's not my first go-to unless it's
awful
like
experience
where you can't get them financed through a local lender. But what's the benefits for you? You think that we bring our business to a local lender?
I think local lenders across the board, it's just a higher touch experience. I think that the big box lenders are, they can get a deal done if it's like W-2 pay stubs, very straightforward, very simple, easy as pie deal. But if there's anything that gets weird, it takes somebody who has time to just sit with the deal and somebody who actually cares about the client to figure it out. I think also just across the board, local lenders have better rates than you'd see at big box because they have low overhead. Those guys have 200-300 employees that they have to pay, so everything's kind of baked into the rate. But outside of rate, because that's not all that matters, I think it's just higher touch. Like, the person that you're dealing with. They'll email you directly and be like, hey, I need X, Y, and Z to get the deal done. And then mostly I think having a local lender is important for when things go wrong. I think it's less about when, everything's going to go right all of the time when you have a local lender, because it's just not the case. There's so many things that can go wrong in a deal. I think the real benefit comes from when things go wrong, because it's like, I can pick up the phone and call Maggie and be like, hey, here's what happened. Here's why. And here are the solutions, as opposed, exactly. As opposed to like, hey, this happened, like, you got to figure it out, which is like probably the call you're going to get, or if you get a call at all from like a Rocket or like a big box like that.
And I like what you said. It's just about caring about the people, because you're not going to have somebody at Rocket Mortgage care about you. You're a number to them.
You're just a number.
And not to like bad talk Rocket Mortgage or anything, but that's just how experience. It is. Yeah.
Well, and I'm assuming you have in-house underwriting.
We actually don't have in-house underwriter, and there's actually a reason for that, because if a deal goes wrong with an in-house underwriter, you can't take the deal anywhere else. You have one underwriter.
Gotcha.
So what we do instead is called non-delegating lending, whereas that would be called delegated lending. Non-del means that you have investors on the back end of the deal, so they're not the money behind it, we're the money behind it, and we sell it to them on the back end. And they have their underwriters that underwrite the deal. The reason that we do that is because if something goes wrong on the deal, we can just move the loan. So let's say, for example, we have an investor that we do a lot of business with named Penny Mac. They're really weird about how they calculate self-employed income. So if we have a deal that's self-employed and we don't like the way that they're calculating the income, because for whatever reasons they have their own rules, we'll just move the loan. The client won't really see that going on. It'll all be happening on the back end, but it's a backstop for them to be like, hey, for whatever reason, this underwriter doesn't like the deal, we're going to move it. And we're still going to get the deal done on time. The client's rate will be the same. Like any pricing changes that happen like that, like we always eat that. We wouldn't put that on to the client unless it was, something the client did or didn't tell us the truth or something like that. But it's a backstop for them.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, because I've always thought if they had an in-house underwriter that you can get to easier than you're like, in a different state or they're, far away. So you could just actually get to them, because the underwriter, I feel like, is such a pain in the ass half the time. They're the ones that make or break the deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, if you have like a relationship with that underwriter, I always thought it makes it better for all parties. But yeah. But if they break it, then you're stuck with them, and now the deal's dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
so it's like,
that's not good.
Yeah. So Jerry used to work for a company that had an in-house underwriter, and it's exactly what you're saying. So it's like, she wouldn't like the deal for X, Y, and Z. If she, her job is to protect the company. So she's doing her job. She's trying to do her job the best that she can. Sure. If she doesn't like the deal, you call the client and say, hey, you got to go close it with somebody else. Like there's nothing, the underwriter doesn't like the deal for whatever reason. Like crazy stuff comes up.
Yeah.
We don't have to move the deal frequently. We get a lot of the deal done up front, make sure nothing goes wrong. But,
yeah. Like, and I do want to point out that's something that I like about your company that not a lot of other people do. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your company underwrites before you even go under contract, correct?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's right. So we do what's called a TBD underwrite, which TBD meaning there's no property. So it's a to be determined property. So we'll actually have an underwriter approve the loan, get a conditional approval, and say, hey, we've looked at the income, assets, credit, all the stuff that could cause problems on the deal. At this point, all we have to do is get an appraisal.
Right. Wow. Yeah, so you get rid of all that junk up front. Yeah, it's not really just like because a pre-qual letter means really not too much, right? Like, because they haven't even sent probably all their documentation in. So that's good. I mean, if the client's willing to go those extra miles in the beginning, right, by getting all their stuff to you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's when a deal goes perfectly. Like you said, it really is up to the client, and we kind of present that to them up front. We're like, hey, this is going to be a lot more work. You're basically going to do all the work that you would be doing after you're under contract right now. Yeah. And if you do it right now, I promise you your life will be easier.
Oh, absolutely.
But some clients don't. Some clients are just like, I just want to know what my payment and all that is, and we'll deal with it later. Right. And we're like, okay. Like, we want them to have, oh my God. Drop it.
That scared me.
Yeah, we want them to have a good experience.
Oh my God.
Oh, that would be funny.
Cut all that out.
Okay, cut.
But yeah, I mean, we want them to have a good experience. We tell them, hey, this is what it's going to take for you to have the best experience possible. If you don't want that, you're still going to have a great experience. I'm just telling you, here are your options. Here are the routes you can take. The only reason we would force somebody to do it is if there's like, it's something really complicated and we're like, hey, no, we actually need you to do this right now. But if it's a W-2 borrower, it's like, I've seen their pay stubs. It's like, if we're missing one thing.
Gets rid of all the headache that you can come to a week before closing or a day before closing, whatever. Like, we see that all the time. We see deals fall apart at the table. It's like, okay, let's get rid of all of that, do it all up front, and then you don't have to worry about it again. And basically, you wait.
What also makes us close deals faster. So it's like if the deal's already underwritten, all we have to do is get an appraisal. We can get an appraisal done in a week. So like closing in 2 weeks is not stressful. Yeah. Because it's already like the work is already done. We just have to get an appraisal.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that.
I love that.
And not a lot of people do that. So I love that about your company. Yeah. So another thing we want to ask you too is, what do you think clients should use or should do to vet lenders, and like, what are good questions to ask? What's good information to know? Stuff like that.
I think the worst thing that they can ask is about rates. I think that if there's a good lender, they're going to have good rates. But if you start calling lenders and say, I want the lowest rate possible, they will continually to cut their margin. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be doing a better job for you. There will always be somebody who will close a deal for cheaper than I will, always. Because I've seen, especially now, like when deals come in, I've seen us lose deals to somebody who's doing the loan for $250. That's how much they're getting paid on the deal. And I'm like, you will get what you pay for, I promise. Like, that's probably the worst question you could ask. The best question you could ask is, how long have you been in this business? Because there are so many things that can go wrong. Like we've said, there's so many things that can go wrong on the deal. If they haven't been in business that long, well, do you have a supervisor look at all of your deals? How do you guys calculate income? How do you guys do your underwriting? All of those kind of things. How fast can you guys close? All of those things I think are a little bit more important. And I think the rate, it's not to say that like it's not important, but if you're a good local lender, you're going to have better rates than most people.
I don't think, I mean, it's easy for us to say it because we're in the business, but I don't think buyers are educated enough to ask those questions.
Yeah.
The only thing that they really know is what's the rate and what's my payment? Because at the end of the day, the payment means everything, right?
And that's what's so publicized.
Yeah, and I think that that's something we as agents probably need to work on with buyers is, okay, you're out vetting. We just send them to our lender because we have a relationship and that's it. And then the lender takes over, right? But that probably is a good idea is to, if we give them like 3 lenders,
here's some questions to ask them, and then make your decision.
And then make your decision. Not, hey, use him because we trust him.
Yeah, totally.
They need to feel that trust too. So that's something you and I should probably work on more.
That's awesome. We should.
And that's good.
I think that's a great idea. It's like, hey, you know, I think the other thing is like you want to clients especially want to deal with somebody that they actually like.
Yeah.
Every time.
There are some, you know, I'm not speaking broadly, but there are some that are just kind of like condescending, like bankers. Yeah. And you know, what you could do is just be like, hey, here are a couple questions to ask them and just kind of like pick whichever one you like, kind of like their vibe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which just sounds crazy. But it's like, if you want to have a good deal, if you want to have a good transaction.
They pick us on our vibe.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go show a property and they're like, ugh.
Yeah. And then they never talk to you again. It's like, okay.
Or, wow, I really connected with you and I can't wait to like go look at properties. Because you spend a lot of time with buyers.
Absolutely.
Like if you're not vibing, I don't want to go spend 5 hours with them either.
Yeah. No. And I love what you said. You get what you pay for. I think that goes for everything in life and every service you pay for. But just because you're getting something for cheaper does not mean you're going to get a better service or even the same service. Yeah. You might be a little bit more expensive, but it definitely will probably be worth it.
I mean, I'm sure it's similar for you guys listing houses. It's like, you know, if you have a client who's like, yeah, I want you to list it for 1%, you're like, you're going to be able to find a realtor who will do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not me.
But what do you, exactly. It's like, but what do you want? What is the experience you actually want? Or are you just looking for the cheapest? Because you'll get the cheapest.
And we see that all the time. We see it all the time with listings. And I mean, people, especially like other realtors, not us, because that's just not how we are, but they'll see a 2% or 1% on there and they'll keep scrolling, not even show it to their client. Because they're like, that's not worth my time. Yeah. It's not worth my effort. And that's just kind of the thing. Like you have to have that conversation with them up front and just set expectations. Like, look, we want to get paid 3% because we're working for that 3%. We're going to market the hell out of your property and we're going to get it sold. A lot of the times, the 2% and 1% just sit on the market because people don't want to fuck with it.
Like what is it, Red Door, OfferUp, all those that are not paying anything, but you can't even talk to an agent.
Yeah.
You're talking to
automated service.
It's like, it's awful. Why would you want that representing you in the sale of your home? Like they are not working for you.
No, not at all.
But people, again, at the end of the day, they don't want to spend the money.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So while we're on rates, and I love this because it was such a I think we even put it on our Instagram page. Yeah. Marry the house, date the rate, la la la. And we've talked to lenders that totally believe in that. Yeah. And you don't. So I want to hear this answer.
I think marry the house, date the rate is the worst thing that happened in 2022.
Okay.
Honestly. I think that it was a great it was really sexy. It was a great marketing pitch, especially for lenders to be like, hey, everything's fine. Hey, we're fine. 7%. It's no big deal. Like we're just dating this rate. Let me be very clear, and I'm going to look in the camera. You're signing a 30-year contract when you get a mortgage, okay? You are not dating the rate. On top of that, you are not guaranteed that rates are going to go down. Even if they do go down, okay, we're sitting right now like 6.25, 6.375, something like that. If you wanted to refinance, you have to, a good rule of thumb is you got to get a rate that's about a point lower than where you're currently at for it to make sense, just financially. There's no guarantee that even if rates go down, they're going to go down far enough for it to make sense for you to refinance. Yeah. So just because rates are going to go down, which apparently is an absolute certainty, and apparently every lender knows that they're going to go down in Q2 or Q3. The Fed came out last week and said, "Hey, we're not going to lower rates till 2024." Okay, so all those people who bought a house in 2022, whether the Fed's right or not, that's not the point. All the people that bought the house in 2022 said, yeah, I'm definitely going to be able to refinance in 2023. You might not be able to. Mm-hmm. So my point, and what I've been pushing the entire time, is like, why don't you buy a house that you're okay with the monthly payment is where it's at right now?
That is it, yep.
Like, you're not dating this rate. There's a good chance that you could never refinance. We saw historically low rates. If you're able to refinance, congratulations. Like, it's just icing on the cake, and we're so happy for you, and we'll do it for you. But like pushing this narrative of, hey, let's date this rate. Like, you're only going to be in it for 18 months. It's fine if it's like a little bit too high than what you're comfortable for. No, just buy a cheaper house. Right. Like, just relax for a second and stop trying to push as far as you can, because rates are definitely going to go down. Like, it's just not the case.
Right. And nobody knows that. Nobody has a crystal ball.
I'm like, where's that crystal ball?
I know. Because I wish we had it.
I mean, I don't think we're going to see anything till 24. It's probably actually 25. We've got a lot of changes that need to be made and some corrections to be made. So I would say feel comfortable with the mortgage payment, because that's what you're stuck with.
Yeah.
You don't get to bail on that contract.
While we're on this, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say the other thing with Marry the House, Date the Rate is a lot of people that they were pushing this narrative on were first-time home buyers. Mm-hmm. First-time home buyers traditionally put down the least amount. They don't have a lot of cash, so they're putting down the lowest down payment. They're putting down 3 to 5% most of the time. Sometimes even less if they do like down payment assistance and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So if we're sitting in 2024, if rates are going down, there's other things that are happening outside of your rate going down. If the rates go down, that means the Fed accomplished their goal, which means they put the US in a giant recession. Okay, congratulations. So if you're in a recession, no, I'm serious.
He's speaking
the truth.
Real estate is not a silo. Real estate doesn't operate outside of everything else. Real estate is in the economy that we're in. So if a recession happens, jobs are lost, savings accounts are destroyed, things like that. Like, those things are real. It's not to say they won't come back. It's not to say like you're going to be crippled. The point is that real estate prices will come down. If you put down 5% on your house, and let's say the market drops 10%, you are now upside down in your house, which we all know is not a big deal if you just sit on the house and wait.
Yeah. Right.
Like, they're going to come back up. You know, you're only upside down if you sell the house.
Right.
But what if you try to refinance? Because you get this new sexy, they could drop the rates to 1%. Guess what? You can't refinance because you're upside down in your house. Yeah. Or you have to go bring $30,000 to refinance because you're now upside down in your house. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's put our buyer hats on. You just watched your entire stock portfolio drop 30%. Now you're going to have to put up $30K to refinance. Uh-huh. You're not dating this rate.
Yeah. And that's not feasible for most people.
Absolutely. Nor do they want to.
No.
Yeah, nor do they want to. It's like, there are other things that are going to happen if the rates come down. So like, let's not push this narrative of let's marry this house, date this rate. Let's like marry the rate. More than likely, the rate's going to be around longer than the house will be.
Yeah.
Like, you can't divorce the rate. You can't just like bounce whenever you want.
I think that was such a sales tactic.
Absolutely.
I mean, we did, and we are going to own it because we did put it on our Instagram as a post one time. But it is a sales tactic, and it's there's so many uncertainties, and it's scary. The market's scary.
Yeah.
And I don't think that 7% is that big of a deal. Mm. But like you said, you buy a less expensive home, and so your mortgage payment makes sense. Yep. You don't go buy a $500,000 home with this huge mortgage strapping you. So you just have to be smart about it. But again, it goes back to educating these buyers because they don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're just freaking out that, oh my God, it was 4% a few months ago and now it's 7%. And holy shit, when's it going to go back to 4%?
Yeah.
Well, the refinance market is dead.
Yeah. And let's look at previous rates.
Yeah.
Like, let's go back 10 years and see the patterns there and realize that 2020 happened. Crazy experience for everybody. Mm-hmm. Probably not going to happen again for a very long time. So you got to understand like what was happening in our country and around the world affected our economy. And we're probably not going to get to that for a while.
No. And everything's in cycles and seasons, right?
Yeah.
So like,
and I love that you said that earlier. Everything's a cycle.
Yeah. You just ride the cycle.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to come back around.
Yeah. And again, it's not to say like, hey, don't buy a house because like rates aren't going to come down. It's just like, hey, just buy one that you're like comfortable with the monthly payment. And if the monthly payment goes down further, like, hell yeah, good job.
Well, and I'm
like,
sure you're doing the 2-1 buy downs, which we are like pushing on all of our clients, and they've been taking full advantage of it because the sellers are paying it.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. That's a way for them to get a lower rate and a smaller payment, and it gradually gets there, right?
Yeah, and I think the 2-1 buy down is very similar, where it's like, hey, this is great, like you're getting a great payment, but it's like, hey, let's make sure, like, are you comfortable with this last payment?
Yeah. Because
like if you're not, then you're buying the wrong house. Like if you're not comfortable with the payment on year 4 or year 5, like let's hold on a second. Like, let's really think about it because this isn't guaranteed. But yeah, agreed. It's a great way to capitalize on everything, with the monthly payments and all that, assuming that you're comfortable with like 4 years down the road. It's like, hey, this isn't going to break your bank. Like you're okay.
And everything's just been so publicized. It's just put such a skewed like thought of everybody. Zestimates.
Oh.
Why can you not trust them?
Yeah, I think, well, you do a lot of real estate investing, right?
I do.
Yeah, so I think residential real estate and commercial real estate are very, very different, especially when you look at investment properties.
For sure.
It's tough to use as estimate to say what your house is worth, mostly because residential real estate and the way appraisals work are all based on comparable sales. So what an appraiser will do is go in and say, okay, this house is for sale at X amount. Let's look around at houses that are similar, what they sold for, and those are going to affect what the value of the house is. Okay, what happens if your next door neighbor went through a horrible divorce, doesn't care about making money on the deal, and sells it at a short sale? That house, let's say you're buying it for $500,000. Next door, that house sold for $400,000 because he doesn't give a shit. Mm-hmm. That's going to tank your value that you see on Zillow because the next door neighbor sold it for $400,000.
For sure.
That doesn't mean your house is now worth $400,000. It just means that the Zestimate is probably going to say that because your next door neighbors have $400,000. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you look at a commercial deal, commercial is all based on the cash flow. I wish investment properties were based on cash flow because it makes much more sense. They just go on cap rates and.
Well, anybody that invests in real estate, that in residential, that's how I look at it. It is 100% cash flow. It's 100% cap rate. It's the return at the end of the day. I don't care about anything else. That's it. That's the bottom line. Is it bringing me cash? If it's not
worth it.
It's not the opportunity for us.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think when you're going to look at investment properties, you look at like, you do it more similar to a commercial deal where it's like you look at cap rates and actual income rather than like what the Zestimate says or what like the next door neighbor sold it at. Because if you can make money on the deal, you know, if you can make 8-9%, you're doing better than like if you go buy T-bills or something like that.
For sure.
So like that's kind of my opinion on Zestimates and all that. It's great to see oh yeah, my house is appreciated, but it's like,
I know. And we get those phone calls.
Oh yeah.
Well,
I'm sure.
Estimates, and I'm like,
sure.
okay, let us run some comps because we can show you what it really looks like.
Yeah.
And usually that estimate is so inflated.
It's
way higher than, so then they've got that mental like, my house is worth this.
Yeah.
And you're like, nah.
Well, I think you also have to look at it from like where you're getting the information. Like Zillow is a company that was built on top of an MLS, which is just public information. They just made it really sexy. Mm-hmm. And Zillow's built on selling leads. Mm-hmm. That's the entire company. They sell leads to lenders and realtors. That's the entire company. So they're incentivized to overinflate your house to be like, oh shit, I could probably sell this house. Like, let me call a realtor and a lender. They just sold 5 leads and that's how they're making their money. I mean, you have to remember that like there's other factors that go into your estimate.
For sure. And I think that just goes back to using somebody local too, because we'll actually make that call to the next door neighbor, her listing agent, Sue. Like we're going to call her and be like, hey, why did this house sell for so low? And then she's going to go into, oh, well, they had a divorce. It was a short sale. That's why it's so low. It throws off comps, blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely.
But if you use somebody else, they're not going to make that call because, again, they don't care.
Yeah.
You're a number.
Right.
Yeah, but you guys know this better than anybody. You guys are realtors. Like real estate's a story.
100%.
Like values are just a story of what somebody will buy a house for. Like you could rebuild my house for $300,000, but that doesn't mean it's worth $300,000. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's like.
Well, and I think with this whole year was so crazy, right? Like we started the year off with like such inflated prices and over ask offers and all this cash. And, and then it's like, you know, now it's completely flipped into a buyer's market. Mm-hmm. And it's like having to explain, no, the house that sold back in February for 1.2 is now only actually worth like 800,000. So your house is not worth 1.2.
Yeah.
And
it's really hard to rein people in.
It's hard to rein them in because everything happens so fast this year. Mm-hmm. That's not normal. Like I've been in this business long enough to know that like you don't go from a seller's market to a buyer's market within like months. Mm-hmm. Like this is a slow transition. So now you've got these buyers that are expecting the world. Mm-hmm. They're lowballing and asking for all these credits. Like, shit, like 6 months ago.
They want their cake and eat it too.
Oh, and it's so pain in the ass to say the least. Like, you know, you were willing to pay $200,000 over asking in February, and now you want to lowball them $100,000 and ask for 20 in repairs
and credits.
Oh, it's like
it's insane. I get it.
It's so difficult, though.
I get it, but at the same time, it's like we need to reel it in. We need to come back to reality. Nashville is always going to be a hot market because it's Nashville. I mean, we're growing so much. There's no plans on slowing down. you guys see the plans for the city. It's just going to keep growing.
Right.
So people need to kind of calm down on the fact that they can have their cake and eat it too, because we're balancing right now. We're in
that's a wonderful thing.
Yes,
balance
we are
is good.
calming for so long. Nashville was just so crazy. Nashville people couldn't afford it. And it's really hard to see somebody like you and me that are from here see what has happened, because people that love it here and want to live here can't afford it here anymore. So they're being pushed out.
I know, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is.
And they're blaming it on the damn Californians.
It's all Kara's fault.
All our fault. California, we're full, no more.
I know. Okay, so we do want to ask you a little bit about your real estate endeavors.
Oh yeah.
Do you invest? Like, what's your outlook on all of that?
I do. I have 3 properties in Nashville. They're all in the same neighborhood, which I just love because I can just like walk to them. I bought my first house in 2020, right when I moved here, and it was a primary residence. And then the house across the street went for sale, and I purchased that with my dad, who also does a lot of real estate investing. We renovated that, and we are now renting it to an Australian country band, which is always fun because I get to, yeah. And then I recently bought a house in September, down the street from where I was living. And yeah, we moved into there in September.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it was a very, very similar to like what you've been seeing online with like the house hacking and all that. So I purchased a house in July of 2020, and then lived there for 2 years, had roommates and all that, and then got a HELOC on the house, and then borrowed on the HELOC to buy the next house. And then that's getting paid down by the rent.
That's something I want to ask you really quick while you just brought that up.
Yeah.
Is that a no-no for lenders?
What?
Buying another property with a HELOC? With the money from a HELOC?
They don't need to know what you're doing with your HELOC.
No. Well, if you like borrow the money on the HELOC to buy the next house, it's okay if it's secured by real estate. It doesn't matter. They'll just count that monthly payment against you on your DTI.
Right.
So as long as your income's fine, yeah, it's totally fine.
Once
Yeah,
you
just
get
wanna
that
get your thoughts
cash,
on it.
they don't really know. They're not tracing it. As soon as you get your HELOC, you put it in an account and you can do
Well, especially if it's secured by real estate. Like you're gonna list all your real estate on your loan application,
Right.
And it'll be on your credit report too. So you're just like, hey, this HELOC's on this property. They'll just count all the payments.
Okay,
And
cool.
yeah, it's no big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And to wrap it all up and what our podcast is about, work-life balance.
Yeah.
I follow you on Instagram and obviously known you for a little bit. You like to travel.
Love to
You have a
travel.
girlfriend.
I
You
do.
have the high life of Nashville. So how do you balance it all with work in your life? And do you have any tips for us?
Yeah, I think you guys are doing pretty good. For me, there's kind of like the daily and then the like across the year what I try to do. So daily, I do a lot of my work in batches. So like for example, in the mornings, I'll do all of my update calls, and I'll like just take an hour, put my phone on do not disturb, and just take an hour and call everybody. And then it's very similar when I like get a new contract in or like a new application in or something like that. I'll just spend 45 minutes uninterrupted to focus on that. And I think that's helped tremendously because I get towards the end of the day and it's like, okay, I have all this time now because I really have focused work. I think when you start getting distracted and pulled in a bunch of different directions, it makes it a lot more difficult to like map out your day. So I try to sit down and like map out my day at the beginning of the day or the night before. And then I think like as far as balancing work and play, I just know that burnout is a real thing. And so I usually take like weeks off and just like, I have a really great team that's behind me. All the processors that we've hired are all above 50 and they're all been in the business for 30 years. So we really have the ability to just take our file and just throw it back to them.
It's awesome because you trust them so much.
Yeah, we trust them so
it's
much.
gonna get done.
Yeah,
so
we
important.
pay them a lot of money. They probably make 30 or 40% more than any processor in the country. They chain smoke cigarettes and sit on a lake in East Texas, and they process 50 files a month.
Amazing.
Like just chilling. So
As long as the work's getting done.
That's it.
yeah, exactly. So we have a really, really good team, and I think it's really key to like pay your people really well for the really good job that they do. And then, yeah, I try to go on like some big trips. My girlfriend's probably a bigger traveler than I am, which is pretty hard to believe, but She's all over the place, so I just kind of follow her. But
That's cute.
You work hard to travel hard. That's
yeah,
my motto,
exactly.
too.
Yeah,
I love it.
We're renovating an Airstream trailer right now, so eventually I'll just be working out of that, which will be
That will be so
yeah. So
awesome.
that's the goal. So my family's all over, her family's all over. So
That's
yeah.
badass. And
Yeah.
you're so cool. And
Oh, thank you.
You just have the best vibe ever. And
Yeah.
we really enjoyed having you on today and learning
Yeah.
so much from you. And
Why don't we let him give a shout out on your podcast
Yeah.
too, so people can.
Yeah, so our podcast is called the Lender Soapbox.
Okay.
So it's two lenders that get on our soapbox every week and talk about real things that are going on in the industry. It's super targeted towards realtors, so it's consumers can listen to it, but it's really we get really into the weeds on lending and the market and things like that. So it's really designed for realtors who want to be more educated in the space. So we focus on really in-depth programs that we do for self-employed people. Like really out of the box, like one-off deals that we do. And then we talk about the markets, and we talk about, similar to what we're talking about here, like, trends that we're seeing on Instagram, trends that we're expecting moving forward, things like that.
debunking myths, things like that.
Yeah, debunking myths.
That's good.
And I do think, we really go into the numbers, so it can also be a good tool to show like clips to clients and things like that. So for example, we go into a clip of like, hey, you can actually get into more expensive houses today with less money than you could before. The numbers behind a 2-1 buy down and when it makes sense and when it doesn't make sense, things like that. But they're all really tools for realtors to be more educated, specifically on the lending side. Cause I know that's it's definitely a black box. You either know a lot or you don't know much. So we try to shed light on it, because I think, my biggest problem, and again, this is probably a little soapbox, but like my biggest problem is that a lot of lenders think that they're so smart and like they can understand this, nobody else can. And it's like really not that complicated.
Yeah.
You can really break it down pretty simply.
Yeah.
If you're just really, if
Well,
you're
I
real.
feel like for me personally, like a lot of the lending stuff, I just like it's kind of overwhelming. I'm not a numbers person.
Yeah.
I just really want to know if the client is financing or if they're able to be financed
Yeah.
or qualified and what's their number and let me go to work.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like, she, on the other hand,
I
is
love learning about it.
she's really inquisitive about it, and it's like awesome. That might be really great for you to just start.
Oh yeah, I've listened to a few episodes, and like you really do. Like we were talking at lunch one day about reverse mortgages, and then I went and listened to your podcast episode on reverse mortgages. Completely understand it.
Yeah.
And I love that you just said that you put it in a way that's really easy for other people to understand, because it's a hard topic to grasp,
Totally.
but if you have it laid out easily.
Yeah, I think it's
everybody
also
can
like when you
understand.
start getting into it, you're just like, oh, these terms are really like, debt to income ratio, LTV. It's like all these terms are really weird, but like when you actually sit and you're like, oh, that actually makes
basic
sense. Yeah,
concepts.
it's
Yeah.
like, oh, these guys aren't that smart. Yeah, that
It
makes
all
sense.
just goes back to educating and wanting to learn and being a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much
Thank
for
you
coming
so
on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
You're so awesome.
Yeah, it's nice to
and
meet you.
Thank you for making that last deal so smooth for our client.
Yeah.
It really was
Wonderful.
probably the easiest deal I've ever done. Like
Yeah.
you
That
ordered
one
the
was wild.
appraisal, we got it back, we were all good.
That one was
He's
fun.
like,
So
we have
simple.
got to get him on. He was
I
so
know.
great to work
What's
with.
funny
He
too
was.
is so I met Maggie for the first time because through KB Boone, who I work out with. She's like a really good friend of mine. But she had a deal that we had to step in for. And it was like 10 days before closing. They had like a shit show that popped up with some lender out in Chattanooga. So we had to come in, get an appraisal. It was a 10-day close with an appraisal. And I think Maggie was, oh, wait, no.
No, okay.
Oh,
so
that's how I got with Bradford. And
Okay.
then she connected me with Maggie.
what had happened was
Yeah.
we were working with the same client because KB referred them to me because she didn't
That's
know
right.
about the area.
That's right.
Because the realtor that they had before was awful, didn't show them anything, like didn't tell them anything about the property,
That's
wasn't giving them any information. And like at the last second, they had to hop realtors and hop lending
boy.
companies to be
That's
able
right.
to move here within like a month.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
So,
shout out to
then
the
we were able to help
Smiths.
them out.
Shout out to the Smiths.
Shout out to the Smiths. Hey, they're awesome. I love them so much.
Yeah.
I still talk to them all the time.
Yeah,
So,
they're awesome.
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Yes, but yeah, thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
on.
thanks
We
for having
really
me.
appreciate
Creating
it.
relationships, and that's what it is right
Yeah.
here. So thank
That's
you
right.
so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody,
Have you back.
go listen to his podcast, Lending Soapbox, and also don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.